Hi everyone, I'm super excited to host Aakash. He's CEO and co-founder of InspectMind AI and ProStruck. Thanks a lot for being on the show.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Tell us back, take us back to the college days and till date. What would you say would be your top three career highlights?
Yeah. So even before college, so I grew up in the Bay Area, and my dad's a structural engineer, and my mom's a software engineer. And so I always just grew up at this intersection of like construction and software, seeing job sites, seeing engineering plans, calculations, kind of that whole world. And just growing up side by side with software and startups. Like I went to high school in Palo Alto, and then I went to college at Berkeley. So pretty much been in Bay Area most of my life. So yeah, in college, I studied EECS at Berkeley, so electrical engineering, computer science. But I always had that kind of interest in AEC industry because of my dad. And actually, his dad was also a civil engineer. So I'm not a civil engineer, but I'm in this field. I'm still in this field, maybe more on the business or technology side versus like engineering. So in that sense, it's like third generation in civil engineering to some degree. But, that intersection always fascinated me. And then going to college in Berkeley, studying CS, this was 2009. 2012. So back then, what was happening was we had just gotten out of like this housing crisis, the great financial collapse that had happened in 2008 or so. So just coming out of that, and it was kind of like the next wave of technology was starting, like with mobile and social networking and everything. So like, like what had happened after like the, 2000 was tech had kind of become like not hot for like almost a decade. Like, after the internet thing, like the dot-com thing, like tech was like not hot for like an entire decade. And then like when I was in college, it just started picking up. Like I remember when I was in college, like, Dropbox was going super fast. They were still like pretty early back then, but like they'd come to Berkeley with like their career fairs with all their t-shirts and all this stuff. And it was like, it was really cool back then. Now every startup does it, but back then it was like, wow, this is a startup. This is cool. This is something new, unique. I know now like everybody's a founder, but back then it was really something unique and cool, and growing up around it was definitely an experience.
So that was early 2010.
Yeah.
And post that, there has been multiple experiences. Who has been like a career mentor who has shaped your thoughts and perspective?
Yeah, I don't know if I have one right now, but I'd say that, the best thing has been just learning by doing, I'd say. It's really learning by doing. I think just the more you do, the more you experience, the more you learn what to do, what not to do. Right now, if I ask, is like a career mentor, I don't really have one, but I'm always learning. Just every business is different, right? I've been involved with, several different startups, several different companies at this point, both on software, on services, tech-enabled services, within AEC, outside of AEC. And every company is different. What works for one company doesn't necessarily work for another company. Every time you are doing a new company, you have to always really understand that market, that product, those customers, that go to market. And so I'd say the thing that's helpful is always having like a beginner mindset is very important. Like I think like it's pretty well known, like Amazon kind of has this concept of day zero. But I'd say even more than that, it's really at a personal level, like having like that humility and beginner mindset to always keep learning, because things always change, and every company, every space, every market, like every product, it's different. Now there's a lot of commonalities in terms of like the process of building a company and how you do it. But you also have to have the humility to really understand like what's going to make this company to succeed versus another company. And the answers may not be the same. Like for example, like what one of my businesses is a engineering business, like civil structural engineering. And what's needed there and how to make that very successful is different from, for example, how to make an AI product successful, right? So you have to always be like learning and open-minded and kind of have that beginner mindset, so that you never think like, oh, you already, have all the answers. You have to be constantly learning and adapting.
What are the step functions as a person and skills you develop from the version of you which was in college versus the version you have now? Because you have done multiple businesses, like right from like doing sales, hiring. There's so many new skills you added along the way. So what would those be?
Yeah, so I would say there's a number of specific skills, as you mentioned, which you develop over time with experience, but then there's also kind of the meta level. And so in terms of, specific skills, like, you learn sales, right? Because as a founder, you're kind of always selling. You're selling, whether it's to customers, to employees, to investors, to the public, you're always selling, you're always recruiting, you're always convincing people, right? And so you always want people to come be a part of the journey and help build the company, help make it successful. So you kind of have to get good at sales because kind of every aspect of the job at some level is sales and persuasion, which comes from belief. I mean, you have to believe in what you're doing. Otherwise you can't, authentically sell it, right? You have to be passionate about what you're doing because more than, the perfect words, it is the passion that sells. It's when people can feel the passion, the energy. That's when, they get interested, they get excited, they want to look at something. It's not just about like, here's a list of features, it's like trying to sell an iPhone by saying, here's how many gigahertz the processor has. Like, I don't know what gigahertz processor iPhone has. I mean, iPhone is iPhone. It's great, right? And so I think so there's, you learn skills like sales and recruiting and fundraising, prioritization, product, building everything. You learn all those things, marketing. But I would say that those are kind of like the specific, concrete skills and you always keep getting better at it. The more experiences you have, the better, once you have, just the better you get at all those things, and that helps execute. And I think ultimately it all comes down to, quality of execution. Like, how well can you execute? Like, the problem is 1,000 people may have ideas, maybe 10 people will actually go do it, and maybe out of those 10 people, maybe one or two might execute well for the long term. It just like, the skills and just execution is obviously very important. But I think at the meta level, it's more of like, how do you handle the journey? How do you handle the journey so that you can do this for 50 years and not for 5 months, right? There's so many startups where people think, okay, I'm going to try a startup, and they go do it for a year, 2 years. Then they realize it's not like the Social Network movie, it's not like the Facebook movie. And then they quit, they go back to, their big tech or whatever. But you have to kind of, a lot of it is you have to have the right kind of, mindset, the right focus to, motivation, the right motivation, purpose, etc. Where, this is something that you can do for 50 years and not 5 years, not 5 months. And I think when you look at it that way, you can really kind of separate the signal from the noise because it's so easy to get distracted. Folks, the focus is another skill, right? It's very easy to get distracted. There's always so many people doing things. There's always so much noise. There's always so much news. And it's very easy to get caught up in what other people are doing and crunch and stuff like that. And, granted, I used to do that too 10 years ago. There's not much value in doing that. I think it's really, you have to know what matters and stay focused on that and like play your own game. You have to know why you're doing what you do, why you're building your company, etc. And I think that kind of laser focus is very, very important. I like, what's the most important thing, and staying focused on that and kind of even ignoring anything else.
I'm curious to know, like, when you have the mindset of playing a long game, how does a founder develop a muscle for better judgment? Because persevering in the wrong direction, when to close, when to pivot, is also an important skill for a founder. So, what's your wisdom in that direction?
Yeah, so it's basically, the way I think about it is it's not about, having the plan for the next 50 years. That's kind of just foolish because whatever plan you make, it's not going to happen. That's the only guarantee. So what it is it's just about taking the next step in front of you. So sometimes I have friends who are wanting to start a company. The first time they want to quit their job. They want to start a company. I always tell them, don't worry about if you go look at the Mount Everest, it's going to be like, oh, this is impossible. But if you just focus on the next step in front of you, right? It's just one step at a time. So you just need to worry about what is the next step in front of me? You kind of just have to trust and take that step. And then you have to trust and take the next step. And so in the end, it may be 10,000 steps or 100,000 steps, but all of those steps were just, you took, step number 34, then you took the next step to 35, and you took the next step. So at any point, whether you're on step one or you're on step 5,000, it always is just one step at a time. It's about taking the next step and just trusting and taking the next step. You're on day zero, you're on day 5,000. It's the same story. It's the same thing. And so it's not about, having some big plan, because things never go per plan anyways, right? It's more of just taking that, what is the right next step, and just trusting and taking that. And it's the same formula, I think, at the beginning of the journey, in the middle of the journey, throughout the journey. Even when you're climbing Mount Everest, it's every time, it's still just the next step. Whether you're at base camp, you're halfway up, or wherever you are, it's the next step. So I think that kind of holds regardless of um, where you are in the journey.
I see. You simplified it in a such a like good way. But what if you tried 10 different things and you want to reach the next step and you're clueless that okay, I'm stuck now.
You just keep going. You just keep going. Maybe that those 10 things didn't work. Maybe number 30 works. You just keep trusting and you keep going. I mean, there's only one way to fail in this game, and that is if you give up. Otherwise, there's no failure, right? Otherwise, it is only timing. And that's
Mhm.
what I believe. So the only way to fail is if you give up. But if you're at it, it's just a question of at what point do you succeed? Sometimes people get lucky and it happens right away. Sometimes it takes 5, 10 years. Sometimes it takes 20 years. But, in our space, for example, right, the company everybody knows is Procore. They took like 5 years to get to a few million revenue. Just 5 years. 5 years is a long time for most software companies to get to just a few million revenue. But now they're at 1 billion revenue.
Mhm.
And so now I want to beat Procore, but that's something you can learn from Procore. So I'll give them the credit where credit is due, that they stuck with it. But, if Tui's watching, I'm going to beat him. But, the thing is, you got to just trust and take the next step and keep going. I mean, I think that the greatest killer of startups is not the market. It's not funding. It's not competition. It is simply that people give up. It is simply that at some point they get tired and they lose hope and they don't want to take that next step. And I would just say, keep trusting and take the next step anyways.
You co-founded Learn Street, which was a learn to code platform, ran it for 2 years, and also founder of Design Everest, it's tech-enabled AE firm. From those two companies, what would be your biggest lessons learned or takeaways?
Yeah, I've done a few companies, like I said, like services, tech-enabled services, software, consumer, B2B. I mean, every company is different. Like a B2C company, ed tech, it's very different from like a tech-enabled services company. It's very different from kind of an AI native B2B software, like what I'm doing right now with InspectMind. An engineering business is different. Architecture business is different. I think that you have to approach each company as it's a new challenge. You have to have that beginner mindset, which I was saying earlier. I think it can be a mistake to over index on past experience and, something worked at one company, but you don't want to over index on that. What you want to do is you want to always have that beginner mindset with every company, because you want to find what works for this business, what works for this market, what works for this type of product. And I think the more humble you are and the more beginner you are and the more you're willing to learn, it actually is better. So sometimes, like a lot of young founders, they think, oh, they don't have experience, they're very young. What they don't realize is actually they have a huge advantage. The fact that they don't have that experience, the fact that they come in with, bias or baggage, it allows them to look at things from fresh perspective. So I think it's very important to always retain that, even when you have some experience, to always retain that. Well, I mean, from all those companies, I mean, there's tremendous, endless learning. I mean, I wouldn't even know where to start. I mean, all the skills of sales and marketing and product and fundraising and culture and leadership and, building a team and growing revenue. And, I mean, all of those skills, like, you learn from the experience. But at the same time, I would say that the best is in my opinion, that beginner mindset where you treat each company as, this is a new challenge. This is a new challenge. Let's figure out what works for this company and not just be like, hey, something worked for that other company. Like, I'll just do that.
What has been the lowest point in your whole entrepreneurial journey, and what was the mindset? How you navigated that?
Yeah. Yeah. I would say for a previous business, there was kind of a internal kind of dispute, like a co-founder dispute a few years back. And so those are always difficult. Kind of the people side. A business is business, but the people side can be more challenging. And I know that's a common issue with startups, right? I mean, especially early stage, like people get together, build companies, start companies. Sometimes they get along, sometimes they don't get along. But I think that co-founder relationship is very, very important. But the thing at the end of the day is, as long as you don't give up, everything works out. And I would say that right now, like, things have turned out pretty well, and I'm pretty excited about where things are, but also where things are going. The key thing is you just keep having to take the next step and keep learning, keep growing. And the only way you fail in this game, I'll say it again, is when you just stop taking that next step. That's the only way to fail. As long as you keep taking the next step, you're in the game and you haven't failed.
Yeah, we are playing the infinite game.
Yeah, yeah, that's exactly how I think about it. Like, it is about, how do you play infinite games, not finite games? And I think the infinite games are more fun and more interesting and more rewarding than the finite games.
Nice. Uh, so you started Prostruct around in 2023.
Yeah.
Looking back, if you were to start a tech-enabled engineering firm today for the founders listening, what would be like a playbook you would recommend?
Yeah. So Prostruct is a tech enabled, like, civil structural engineering firm. And the way we did it was initially just started as an engineering firm. You build up the business, and then as you do it, then you're constantly looking for ways to automate as much as possible. So we didn't start with automation. We started with just like building a business, and then really you look at every opportunity to automate. And at this point, I think there's like 7 or 8 software engineers within the company, like not civil structural engineers, but software engineers. And that's something pretty unique, right? You typically don't see that in AEC companies. Like for InspectMind, for example, we have customers with thousands of employees, and they have like, they're 2 IT guys, in a company that's that big. So I think it's very uncommon. It's something kind of new, unique that we're doing there. They have like, yeah, 7, 8 software engineers in that company, even though it's a civil structural engineering company. And we're just constantly automating everything possible, whether it's to do with the project delivery engineering, but also like the business and operations aspects of the company. And so the more we do that, just the more efficient it becomes, and the better, faster we and so yeah, that's kind of the approach that we took.
Often, like in terms of engineering service business, the profit margins are lesser than the product businesses. To put more money in R&D and software engineering, software engineers are expensive. So how do you like manage those kind of decisions?
Well, I would say engineering companies are pretty good cash generating businesses. They're often targets for private equity firms for that reason. I think if you do it right, it's a pretty healthy cash generating business. But what I would say is that the engineering kind of business, even tech enabled engineering, it can be a great business. It can be a great kind of private equity style business that grows steady, generates cash, just solid business. Right? But the trade-off is that's not going to be $100 billion company. It'll be a great business. It'll make money. It'll generate cash. It'll be steady and stable and reliable. And that's exactly what, like, the PE kind of style business, like that's perfect fit for that. But then, for example, what I'm doing with InspectMind, which is the AI company, this is more of the VC style business. This is more of, how do we build that $100 billion company? And beat Autodesk and Procore combined, right? And so the ambitions are very different. The purpose of the companies are very different, right? Like a tech-enabled engineering company is just, it's a great business. You're not trying to build the next big thing. It's a great business. The better you can run that business, the more you can buy. But, and so that has, a different purpose. Now, when you look at something like InspectMind, what we're trying to do here is, we're trying to build that kind of AI platform for this industry that, can solve real problems for customers and be I mean, somebody's got to beat Autodesk, I mean, for starters, you have to be bold enough to want to take a shot. If you don't even aim for it, it's not going to happen. So the problem is if you don't aim for it, you'll just sell to them, as many companies do, right? But if you aim for, you don't want to sell to Autodesk, you want to beat Autodesk. Now it's interesting.
I see. So more, if I understand correctly, engineering is more like a lifestyle, either built to exit to P or like a cash flow mindset, and Inspect Mind is your like bold vision.
Yeah, so engineering is it's a great business. It's a very good business. For example, not every business has to be the next big thing. Not every business has to be a multi-billion dollar company. There's a lot of businesses out there that are doing tens of millions of dollars a year, even hundreds of millions of dollars a year, and generating cash, and people are very happy. And that's a great business, and that's success. So you have to know, kind of the goal or the purpose, right? So there's a lot of great engineering businesses out there doing, $50 million a year and generating solid cash, and that's great. That's a great outcome. That's more of a, that is more in kind of the private equity territory, right? Which is, kind of steady growth, stable, viable, low risk, cash generating kind of, businesses. But the VC game is kind of different. The VC game is you're shooting for the stars. Like no VC is excited about a $50 million revenue company. VCs invest because, you're trying to, maybe you're trying to build the next Procore service titan, beat Autodesk kind of thing. And so I think it's a different goal. It's a different purpose. It's a different mindset when you're trying to go for that. And I would say that there's value to both. It's not necessarily that one is better than the other. They both serve different purposes. So but you have to be conscious and aware of what the objective is.
Take us through the origin days of Inspect Mind. How the idea was born, how you met your co-founder.
Yeah, so where the idea came from was, from the engineering business, for example. I'd seen a lot of site visits, when engineers go to the job site and they do an observation, inspection, assessment, and they have to go back and write a report. In fact, my dad's a structural engineer. I saw him doing that. And that's where I realized, there's got to be a better way. This is a great application of LLMs. So we actually tried using LLMs for some of the site visits, and we saw that, hey, there's a lot of promise here. And so we built this app where you take photos and talk, and now there's a bunch of features. You can upload your plans, GPS, offline mode, collaboration mode, etc., multilingual, different types of reports and formats and templates. We are InspectMind. And so the benefit there is basically we've made it really easy to capture data from the field and generate beautiful reports. And so that's basically the problem we set out to solve. And that's just kind of the wedge. That's just the first kind of feature or use case, right? Eventually, we want to build that entire AI platform and solve, kind of a number of problems for the customer, kind of this idea of a compound startup, like if you've heard of that terminology from companies like Rippling, instead of a point solution, can you be that entire platform that compounds startups? That's what we're going for. And as far as my co-founder for InspectMind, Shanling, she's our co-founder, CTO. We were actually neighbors in San Francisco. And that's, a lot of people say you can build companies from anywhere, but there's a disproportionate advantage you have in San Francisco, just the quality and density of talent that is here. Like most of the world, you probably can't say like, oh, I met my co-founder as neighbors, but it's like such a normal thing in San Francisco because everybody around you, they're like builders. They want to do stuff. They want to build stuff. And she was an engineer at Google, then at Airbnb, and she was always like building stuff. And I was always seeing her build stuff. And I was like, she She's good at that. She likes building things. She enjoys building things. Not just for outcome, but she enjoys the process of building things. And I think that's the kind of people you want to work with, because they have to enjoy the process. They have to enjoy the journey, and they have to enjoy building. Otherwise, without enjoying building, you're not going to build a great product.
I see. So it started in 2024, where you were tinkering.
So end of 2023 started kind of tinkering with the idea. That's when the kind of idea came. But basically, we started with, we did the YC batch in the winter 24 YC batch, which started mid-January 2024. So about a year and a half. Yeah, just about a year and a half now. So that's when we started. YC, we did the YC batch. That was like January, April. We also did AI Grant, which is another kind of AI native program from Nat Friedman and Neil Gross. Although they just got acquired by Meta in their kind of Meta's talent grab. Nat Friedman was the CEO of GitHub before. So there's another kind of program called AI Grant, where they've had companies like Perplexity and Cursor and things like that as part of that. So we did that end of last year. And yeah, I mean, focus has really just been on, customers and product. It's really spending time with customers, seeing how best we can help them, serve them, solve their problems, and then using code to do that. Yeah, understanding that, the technology, the code, it's all a means to an end to solving the customer's problem. It is really understanding the customer's problem and how we can be useful to them, and then going and writing code to solve that problem. And so everything we've built in the app, it has come from, actual like customer feedbacks. One of the things that we do, uh, uh, even multiple times a week, is we go to job sites and we meet customers. We go to job sites, we watch them use the product in the field. You can't build a great field app without actually going to the field. So we spend a lot of time at job sites, even we have sometimes we fly, with South Dakota, New York, Ohio, to Florida. Like we fly Arizona. We're going to Arizona on Thursday. We're going to Atlanta on Friday. We're going to New York on Monday. We're constantly going, meeting customers at job sites, and we're watching them use the software, and we're always learning and improving from that. And so I think it's just, having the North Star of doing a good job for the customer, understanding their problems, solving the problems, focusing on them. And I think that's kind of, how we do the product.
What would you say that the most memorable highlight of YC and AI Grant?
YC is a lot of fun. YC is a lot of fun because, I mean, people think it's for like the knowledge of how to build a company, but the reality is a lot of that's kind of common sense. A lot of that is out there. You could do startup school and get most of the basics, and there's all this free content YC has on YouTube. So it's really not for like how to build a company. It's more of really the community is the number one thing. The community that YC has and the brand that it has, I think it really helps. So, I mean, I would say right now, because one of the things is, as you probably know, and many people watching know, being a founder can be a lonely journey. You could be off in the corner building your thing and be pretty isolated. And so one of the best things about YC is you've got this awesome community. Since doing YC, I have so many friends. I have so many friends who are on similar journey, who are founder journey, just being part of that community. And, there's this whole like sense of community, and so many great people I've met because of that, and so many friendships and all of that. I would say that's the biggest thing. After that, I would say the brand does help. It does help in hiring. When investors are looking for startups, the easiest thing for them to see of what is in YC. That's kind of the lazy answer for them, is what's YC, right? So just because of that, just virtue of being in YC, you're guaranteed, investor inbounds, right? You're guaranteed like investors will be reaching out to you, just because like the laziest thing you can do as an investor, although it's a very smart strategy, it's just like, okay, what's in YC, right? They've already done the curation for you. So because of that, like you get a lot of investors, you get a lot of, it helps with hiring, right? It helps with hiring, especially, with a lot of engineers, right? Like YC is a brand that they're familiar with. And so YC is a brand that they like. It's a brand they respect. They're on Hacker News. They've read PG essays, things like that. And so because of that, like it does help with recruiting engineers. It does help with fundraising, makes fundraising a lot easier, just because instead of you go chase investors, like they just coming to you. And so those are the YC benefits. With AI grant, what I would say is it's a much shorter program. It's not like YC where it's several months. The quality of companies in AI grant is at a different level, right? They only have 15 companies per batch. And then, within those 15 companies, you have companies like Perplexity and Cursor and a bunch of other, hits, right? So kind of the hit rate, I would say, of AI grant is something off the charts, very exceptional, right? And so like they got in early on Perplexity, they got in on early on Cursor, and you can see their website, right? And so it's kind of cool to be like one of very few companies
Mhm.
in that crowd. I mean, with YC, what does happen is the batches have grown. There's 4 batches a year now. So there's a lot of companies coming out of YC, but there's so many opportunities in AI that I think it's great for everybody. I think it's very good that they've done that because it just makes so much sense. There's so much opportunity in AI. Why not crank out, more startups kind of during this land grab period? With AI grant, I would say, it's definitely a lot more curated. YC is already curated. Like it's like, whatever the acceptance rate is, 1% or whatever it is, if even that. But you look at, AI grant, it's even next level from that. And so I would say that again, that branding kind of does help, I would say, in terms of hiring and fundraising. It helps you stand out a little bit. But I would say the edge that YC has is the community, right? It's the size and quality of community, just the number of friends that I have made in YC. That alone has made it worth it.
What about the journey of finding first few customers?
Yeah. Uh, yeah, we did that kind of pretty early on. Like within the first month itself, we had our first customer, for example. And I think that I don't know that there's necessarily some magic. You just gotta kind of, especially like you just kind of have to go and brute force those early customers. You gotta try things and you gotta see, you gotta just try different things and see what works and get to your first few customers. And then you start seeing some patterns and you learn in terms of what works, what doesn't. But at the beginning, I mean, you just have to try things and just keep taking that next step. But what I would say is that I do think like there's kind of a lazy way to do it, and there's maybe a more intentional way to do it. And I would say that the lazy way to do it is like, especially now, there's all these AI SDRs and, you just go spam a bunch of people. I think that people just, increasingly get turned off by that. Ignore those AI emails and stuff like that. But I would say that in an industry like ours, which is more traditional, especially AEC, even other traditional industries, I think that yeah, there's just no substitute for relationships, networking, introductions, things like that. So I think there's, it's my answer is less about like, oh, here's some magic app that'll help you get customers to like, you kind of just have to go and meet people and get your customers.
So since it's very relationship driven, like for the first set of customers, just going to events, talking, build that relationship. Like because there are like scalable and non-scalable ways to get customers. So relationship could be one of the non-scalable ways. But then how do you prepare for your go-to market as you're building the product?
Yeah, I mean, I think that there's only so many things you can do. If you think about like go to market channels and everything, like, you can make a list of 5 to 10 different things. And what you'll typically find, and even way later stage, what is true is there's probably one or two of those things that drive most of the results. Like it's pretty power law. And so a lot of marketing is experimentation. You got to try things and then, you see which channels work, which don't. And I mean, what I've always seen is there's definitely like a power kind of thing. Like there's always like these one or two channels that kind of trump everything else. Like if you just kind of double down on those worst and it kind of almost ignored the rest, you're you're probably okay. Although, at the same time, there's value in kind of, that like where people see you across different channels. So there's value in that too. Just helps keep you top of mind. I think it's just the basics of marketing is like, testing and experimentation and try things. And, you see something work, you double down on it, go answer beyond that. I think it's just kind of the, fundamentals of marketing.
Got it. Because a lot of people try emailing, cold calling, as you were saying, like you never know what channel particularly works for your ICP. You just try 10 different things and figure out. But anything you learned the hard way in construction tech sales, which you like to share with the founders who are doing first 5 customers?
I think that trust and relationships are more important in this industry versus like, say, selling to like a startup or selling to tech. I think that it is a more traditional industry. A lot of your customers are probably on the older side. And so building that trust and relationship versus just like here to buy my app kind of thing, like I feel like a lot of times like the traditional SaaS approach I think fails in this market. It is a traditional industry. I think building relationships, getting to know people, building trust, I think that is probably extra important in this field compared to maybe some others people have worked in before.
I want to do a rapid fire round before we wrap up the interview. You
Okay.
have like 5 to 10 seconds and you have to keep the answer super brief.
Okay.
Okay. What's your favorite restaurant?
Catonia Italian restaurant in San Francisco.
Your city which is in your travel bucket list?
I want to go to, well, just anywhere in New Zealand. It's beautiful.
Favorite architecture building?
Building. That's a difficult. I'd say the Freedom Tower in New York. The rebuilding of the World Trade Center, just because what it stands for.
Best piece of advice you have received till date?
Just keep trusting and keep going. One step at a time.
Uh, do you listen to podcasts? If yes, what's one podcast you definitely recommend?
I'll take this opportunity to share my friend Seth's podcast. I have a friend, Seth. He's in construction tech in Bay Area. It's called Constructive. So I've been on his podcast before, but I'll just, yeah, he's a good friend, really passionate about constructive podcast.
Any book or video which made a big impact in your life?
Yeah, actually, there's a book I read about 3 years ago called If You Want to Walk on Water, You Have to Get Off the Boat by John Ortberg. And it's a great book because what it actually teaches you is just how to take risks, how to get out of your comfort zone, how to take risks and kind of where all the, growth and magic essentially happen.
3 words your co-founder would describe you as?
Hopefully, yeah, right? I'd say passionate, optimistic, tenacious, hopefully.
What is one thing most of the people don't know about you?
I mean, I share it a lot, but I think I'm really into my faith. I mean, that is really what drives me more than anything else, like faith and purpose.
Your hobbies?
These days it's probably just socializing. Like, it's just I just love people. I love meeting people, spending time with people. So any chance I get to just spend time with people, like I take it. Like outside of work, it's kind of just socializing is probably it used to be once upon a time I used to go to the gym like 2 hours a day, but I like all aspect.
What is one event you highly recommend a construction founder to attend?
I would say it is actually these smaller conferences and events. A lot of time people go to like those big ones, like they'll go to like the huge ones, but over there's so many people, it's hard to remember who you met. I found the most value in kind of these small conferences, like you have 100 people, 200 people. Now you can actually get to know them and spend time with them. So instead of a specific name, I'll just say, like, if you go to these like really specific niche targeted where, okay, like there's only like 100 people there. Now you can actually get to know people. Now you can actually build relationships, right? And sometimes people get drawn to like those huge ones, but like there's so many people there. It's much harder to like actually get to know people and build relationships.
Anything which we didn't cover in this interview and you like to end on that note?
No, I thought it was great. I mean, I look forward to us beating Autodesk and Procore combined. That's what we're after. So one step at a time.
Amazing. I love the vision you have. Good luck, Akash, in your journey. Always keep an eye on your LinkedIn posts. You're sharing very interesting insights. So thanks
All right. Thanks
for
for
your time.
having. All right. Thank you.